Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. On my podcast episode today, I've got Ben Whitaker. Now, he's the co-founder and the CTO at Kerbo Charge. Ben, thank you ever so much for joining me today on the podcast. It's really, really lovely to see you again. We met in Brighton, didn't we, very briefly?
Yeah, no, it was a lovely windy day in Brighton, but it was, I think, fantastic to get EV transition companies all along the seafront there, because we weren't just meeting members of the public who had deliberately come along to an electric transition event. There were just normal drive-by, walk-by people walking their dogs, doing their exercise, hanging out in Brighton, who then saw what was going on, and it helped them all a few of them to find out a bit more and to normalise that, you know, the EV change, the electric bikes, the cars, the charging and the infrastructure is all coming now, and it's not just the domain of the early adopters anymore.
Exactly. So I suppose really a better way get my teeth in. Better explain what I was there for, what we were there for in the first place. So it was me and my husband did the London to Brighton leg of the London to Brighton to Paris electric vehicle rally, so EV rally, and so like I say, so me and my husband we kind of met there. We arrived in London at 7:30 that Saturday morning, the day that we saw you, and then we drove. And in fact, actually, that was our first longer length of time that we'd actually had an electric vehicle for. We drove all the way from London to Brighton, using a variety of back roads because my husband wanted to keep us more efficient, which was rather interesting and slightly unnerving, going through these really narrow roads in a car that I didn't know that well. But yes, so ending up in Brighton and it was great. So yeah, you were one of the exhibitors on the front. So there was a number of companies, and yeah, so I just stopped and had a chat with you, didn't I? But very brief, because you had lots of people demanding to talk to you at that time.
Well, Kerbo Charge is a relatively new company and a new idea for many people to find out about. So we tend to get a lot of people turning up on our stand because we're solving such a really major pain point for people making the switch to EV in many cases. Absolutely.
So go on. Right, so I just want to say before we move on and I get you to explain what Kerbo Charge does, you also co-founded a company called Masabi, didn't you, as well? So I think there's going to be a bit of crossover when we go through this, but start off by telling me about Kerbo Charge. Where did it all start, and what was the reason for it?
Well, Mike Goulden, the main founder of Kerbo Charge, lives in the middle of London on a terrace street, got an EV because that's the right thing, that's what we're all supposed to be doing, and reducing the dependency on fossil fuels. And he found the experience quite, well, annoying, a bit inconvenient, because unlike most people the joy of an electric car is one that fills itself up overnight. And you know, unlike these funny petroleum burning cars where you have to take them to a petrol station regularly and get something which has been imported from many miles away and processed by magical industrial plants outside of your control. Most EVs, park them on your driveway, plug them into your 3-pin socket, and hey presto, in the morning the tank's full. Hooray! Unless you live in a major city. If you live in these residential areas, high density, most people don't have a driveway, and for these people, I think it's just under 40% of UK households don't have a driveway.
Yeah.
Then you can't charge up at home. You end up, every single time your car runs out of battery, you have to take it to a specific place, plug it in, and pay, I think, 5 times as much for public charging electricity, which is pretty expensive right now. and then either sit in that car for a long period of time or walk away from the car some distance back to your home or wherever you're doing, and then come back and get it so you don't get fined for overstaying, and then retrieve it again. And this care and feeding of the EV when all of your recharges must be public charges really was very annoying for Mike. So Mike thought very much there must be a better solution to this. He's staring at the pavement. How do I get my cable across without dangling it from the trees and the lampposts? How do I do it without the bumpy cable covers that you see waking up the babies and to be honest, being quite upsetting for anybody in a smaller wheeled wheelchair trying to get over. They're not a very pleasant thing to do. And he said, how do we do this better? So Kerbo Charge, we came up with a self-closing lid for a channel that could be fitted flush with the pavement. So whenever you wanted to put a cable in, you'd hold open the end of the lid and feed the cable into it like a little. It zips itself up like a magic Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
And then anybody walking over it gets completely flush. They don't even notice there's a cable in there. And you charge your car overnight, nice and off-peak, so you get the cheaper off-peak power. It's better on the grid. It's better for your battery in your car because slow charging is better for the batteries. And then when you finish, you just whip your cable out and it closes itself behind. The challenge for us is that the pavement is public infrastructure. Yes, so we're going council by council to get the pilots and then the approvals so that we can open this up to everyone. And we've got about 10 councils at the moment doing pilots of Kerbo Charge for various people, making sure that it's acceptable to the utilities and the street workers, highways teams, and then we're going to roll out more widely. But I think the early customers' feedback has been incredible, and we know it's 5 times cheaper to charge at home. But the main thing that our customers have been saying is freedom. The freedom from having to take your EV somewhere, the freedom from having to plan that, the fact that they can then just charge at home is the main thing they're delighted about. And for us, it's so important that we bring people from the cities and from the high density residential areas along with us to the EV transition, especially because that's where the clean air zones of Bristol, clean air zones are coming in. And a lot of people have said they don't want to get an EV unless they can charge at home. Yes. We've in fact had one customer who got an EV, hated charging it publicly so much he got rid of it. Then we gave him the Kerbo Charge, and now he's going back to a full EV. And that's saving 60 litres of fuel a week from their already, just on their plug-in hybrid, because they're now able to plug in for all of their normal daily drives. But very much our belief at Kerbo Charge is that expensive, dedicated fast public chargers should be the charger of last resort. That's the charger you use when you've done an unusually long journey, you're going on holiday, you're going to see Aunt Mabel. That's when you go to a public charger and you don't care that you might have driven a couple of minutes extra, or you've got to sit there for 40 minutes, or you've got to pay 5 times as much, because it's only happening every now and then. Most people drive journeys which are between 2 miles and 5 miles, and they only need to recharge once a week.
Exactly.
If all of that standard commuting and shops and school run, if all of that was all dealt with by off-peak, overnight or solar peak during the day charging, slow domestic charging, the grid isn't going to melt down.
Exactly.
We don't need loads of extra generation. I think there's, gigawatts less demand overnight. We've got, renewable availability, which flex demand by getting the cars to charge advantageously when we've got excess renewables is going to use capacity on the grid that we've got available. And that I think is where we need to be to make the EV transition really work, and work without the doom of it's going to melt the grid. We're just going to melt the grid if everybody's trying to use their fast chargers at the end of the working day because they've all wanted to plug in at the times when they're awake. The grid's going to be absolutely fine if they're all parked and charging overnight nice and slowly.
So what I was going to tell you about, so last week we bought an EV So our very, very first EV. I said, no, I know. I cried. It is so sad. I cried when I got rid of my my petrol. It's because it felt like I was saying goodbye to an old friend. But you know, we'd had it since 2019, and it was a good little VW Golf. But then, you know, kind of, I think it was ridiculous really, because it was a bit of fear as well, about fear of the unknown, you know. So and the thing was, like you said, we literally did, before I was taking my son to school and back, which is probably only about kind of 5 miles each way, you know, 5 to 8 miles each way, not a lot really on a kind of daily basis. So at the weekend I had this longer journey from Reading down to Bournemouth with some friends, and for me, that my range anxiety, it is a thing, you know. I realise now why people get anxious about these things, and it was because I'd not really driven the car very much. I'd not driven it on a long journey. My friends who were non-EV drivers were in with me. I love them dearly, but I was worried to bits, thinking, oh my God. So the amount of organisation that I did in advance, looking at ZapMap, working out which chargers, you know, to use down there, etc., etc. Once we'd set off and we were down there, it was absolutely fine. I had 65% battery, and I was like, why was I so worried? I knew it was an idea to top up when we were down there, but we did use a charger, you know, kind of a rapid charger, and we literally just went for a cup of tea. So we did it on the way back. We went for a cup of tea, half an hour having a cup of tea, came back, car was charged. Bob's your uncle.
I think that's the thing that really gets the goat of EV evangelists is modern EVs, and I don't mean the super, super expensive. Modern EVs all do 250 miles on a tank, quite happily, on a battery. And that's about 3 hours of driving.
I mean, ours is less than that, Ben.
That's 3 or 4 hours of driving. Nobody is driving 3 or 4 hours without a break.
No, if they are, it's mental. They need to stop.
So you've got to stop. And so, you know, and we're not talking about stopping to refill the whole battery either.
No.
Generally, what you're doing is, you know, you might be doing a 300-mile journey that day, and so you go all the way up, and you get halfway back, and you go, I need to top up for the last 50 miles. Yeah. So you drop in, have a cup of coffee, add 50 miles to it, and then get back home.
Carry on, exactly.
And it's not about sitting there to refill the whole tank. You're going to do that when you get home. It's, you know, unlike a petroleum car, you generally start every day full, and, you know, you'll be able to do that big, long journey, either the whole of it like you did. It's only 64% done when you were halfway round. You're like, I didn't even need to charge.
No,
I'd have just gone all the way back and it would have been done. But the charge gave you that little bit of extra comfort, but it didn't take you more than a cup of tea. And I think once people have done it a few times and have friends who've done it, it's going to reduce that anxiety. But also we've got that sort of lumpy leapfrog between EV adoption and infrastructure availability. And briefly, we've got a time when there's more EVs than maintained infrastructure, because we went through a period when we had a load of infrastructure and no EVs, and so the commercial value in keeping all that infrastructure operating wasn't there. Now we've leapfrogged it. We need to bring all of that back into maintenance, but also the at-home infrastructure isn't there. And I don't think we need public charging infrastructure to be big enough to charge everybody's car the whole time. That way madness lies. And a whole bunch of underutilized infrastructure. We need to let people charge at home. That's why solutions like Kerbo charge, solutions like slower lamppost chargers, and, you know, the dilute charging outside the office, various places. These don't have to be ultra high speed. These don't have to have new grid connections. These can also be on smart chargers. So at the times when the electricity is expensive, or the local substation, or even your office or your industrial facility is using a lot of power, you feather back the charging that's going on the vehicles. all of these smart chargers can both respond to grid demand and also have local current sensors to know whether or not your building or your house is currently drawing a lot of power to do its own thing. And they will slow down. So if you've got a really old 1920s terraced house with a wax paper, 40 amp connection to your house, and if you have fitted an induction hob and electric water heater for your shower, it can't rapid charge your car and run an oven and a this and a that and a that at the same time. So you just fit it with a little clamp that senses when your house is using a lot of power doing other things, and it just backs off charging the car until you've finished doing all of that, and then it comes out again. And you can do exactly the same in these other facilities to make sure that nobody's really going to run out of power, because most of the vehicles don't need to be instantly charged up. That's just a motorway thing.
No, exactly.
That's a service station thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And all I wanted was that kind of level of comfort that actually, while I'm getting used to the car, that I had enough charge in it to not have to worry. Because my thing was, so I said, right, while we're down here, let's we were on our way back. I said, look, let's just go to, I knew there was a couple of charge points locally. There were Rapids. There's a shopping centre next door. I said, let's just do that. Let's go and have a cup of tea, because by the time we go back, we're going to be going up the M3. I knew that there was a few points up there, but I just said, look, there's only two there. I don't want to be going and actually as having to wait longer. It's earlier on. And I think it's just a matter of planning and just being a bit more organised. I mean, there were only two rapid chargers, and because it's the first time I've actually charged without, because my husband was there before. It's not that I'm inept or anything like that, but literally we parked up at these two kind of side by side charge points, and I couldn't get it charging because it was out of service, but it didn't say anything about out of service. So once I'd finished, so basically what I did, I reparked to the one next to it. It wasn't a biggie. It was just kind of taking it out. We couldn't use the contactless on the first one. Couldn't get it to work on the app. Moved to the next one, and that was absolutely fine. And I could tell on ZapMap, once I understood what ZapMap was saying to me, because I could see there was something not quite right on the first charge point. So I just moved, did it, connected it, and I actually even took a little video of me and my friends going, yay!
Well, this is really the transition we're going through, which is getting away from an experience with EVs that's okay for early adopters. People who are willing to do a bit of DIY, that understand that they've got to do pre-planning, change their expectations, and sometimes they'll find bits of infrastructure that are broken or not very easy to use or are hidden, and they know that they're an early adopter, and that they wear that. Not as a badge of pride, but they wear it because they know they're doing something during those early adventurous days to get it to be bigger. We're now transitioning through so that this has to work for everybody. This has to be easy for people who are not mechanically minded, who aren't programmers, who understand that somewhere there's a network connection not working and that's why they can't turn it on with their app. They expect it to be more like a petrol station, which is the only thing they've been trained to use. And using a petrol station, there's a whole bunch of skills which people have understood, along with care and feeding of petrol oil breathing cars, and they've got to figure out the new stuff. But we also, as an industry, we need to raise our game to not just be serving the early adopters. It needs to be for the every person who is given an AV as a hire car or a company car or a lease car. They didn't set out to be an early adopter. They just need it to sort of work. And so we need the accessibility and the design of where these charge points are going in to be better. New regulations saying every new charger must have just a simple tap a bank card and give me power. Can't force me to download a new app, sign up for a new account, have to tell it my postcode and my maiden name of my mother's dog or whatever. It's just got to give me stuff like a petrol station. And, when you go to a petrol station and it's out of fuel, there's a big sign up saying there's no fuel here. Or the big yellow things stop it. You can see very clearly which pumps are not working, and we haven't got there as the EV industry yet. We're still needing to learn that the machines need to be very clear with people, so that they don't have to figure out that the machine is not working by doing the debug themselves. the machine should make
Yes.
it very, very obvious, because the amount of wasted time and frustration, if you're debugging, oh, it doesn't work with my card, can I do it with the app? Can I ring the phone number? Oh, it's now eaten my cable and won't release it. All of that stuff needs to not be a problem for the consumer. And I think this is a transition we're going through now. It's from early adopter to kind of mass market. And we need to knock those sharp edges off this experience. But now the commercial opportunity is there. People are recognising that the charger shouldn't be round the back of the car park near the bins. It should actually be round the front. And in fact, the disabled bays, it's the Motability customers who get their cars changed regularly are going to be some of the earlier EV adopters. And they need accessible, visible, close to the front of the shop chargers. And we're going to get there. We're going to get there, but it's not there this year.
No, it's not. And actually, do you know what? So on ZapMap, what I hadn't probably looked at was the information on it to say exactly where these chargers were. And we were already driving, and I was like, oh, God, maybe I should have checked which floor they were on. So we came into this car park. There was no signage to say EV charging here, hi, I'm over here, hi, there's flashing lights or something like that. And we've already gone up to the first floor when my friend spotted, she went, is that them at the end there? And I kind of stopped the car, peered over and went, yeah, that's them. So we had to go all the way round, up the next one, back down and down and down again, and actually parked up. And they were right in the far corner, not in the easiest place to access. And I've got a larger car. It's not a problem. We've got rear parking cameras and all that kind of malarkey. But it wasn't, trying to get... When I ended up moving from one space to the next space, that was really near the wall and, took a little bit of manoeuvring. And I just thought, you know what? This is on the bottom floor. In fact, I might actually have to let ChargeSafe know about this one as well. It's on the bottom floor. There's not a lot of lighting.
A bit dangerous. Well, ChargeSafe is very good for starting to say these are the accessibility, the safety, the cleanliness, all of that sort of thing around chargers for people who don't want to be round by the bins in an area with no other human beings around and feeling a little bit...
And there wasn't anybody on that floor because you're more likely to kind of want
this problem that you've just been describing, as well as Kerbo Charge helping people in terraced roads to be able to charge their car right outside their house on domestic tariff, lovely and off-peak, saving money and not having to travel too far, not having to go to slightly scary, unusual places to leave their expensive, precious new car. Most people only have to charge once or twice a week. So we have we've developed an app which can connect to the charge points that we support, so that you can share your charger with neighbours and other passers-by on the days that you're not charging. And when we set up one of these, two parts of our setup app when you're going to share your charger and be a host to other people. One of them is, as well as putting in your postcode, you then drop the exact pin for where the parking space is that is the right place. Because if you're in a housing block, or it's round the back, or it's in the alleyway behind you rather than in front of you, or offset in a courtyard, I don't know. So put the pin where the actual parking space is. And then the second thing is a couple of photos that actually show where the charger and the space is in context. So you're not hunting around on Google Maps. It's like you can. This is what it should look like, and that's when you know you're in the right place. So if you go and hook in your cable to that, nobody's going to be saying, "What are you doing at the front of my house?" You absolutely know that this is the right one. And the whole point of this sharing thing is, one of the things that was found by where the early gullies and channels have been put in is, people only need to be outside to charge once or twice a week, but sometimes another neighbour is parked in your space.
Absolutely.
And so not everybody on the street will be on the neighbourhood WhatsApp group or Facebook group, but they were using it to say, oh, I've really got to charge for a business trip I'm doing tomorrow. Do you mind moving your car so I can charge there? And people generally were saying, yeah, I'll move that car. But what they also started doing was saying, well, my daughter's coming to see me and she's got an EV. Can she use your charger while she's here? And it's like, yeah, sure. Just give us a $5. And, they were helping each other out and sharing their chargers. And so we thought, well, let's do that, but more. So that if we've got a street of 15 terrace houses and we get 3 or 5 Kerbo charges there, we're not needing everybody to have one.
I was going to
Then
ask
if you've got 3 or 5 in the street, well, wherever you park, you can use a long cable to either charge right outside the house with the charger, or one up and one down. You just sort of trail the cable along the gutter. Anywhere you go, you'll be able to either charge at your own house or somebody else's. And so when you're sharing the charger, it charges out at your domestic electricity price, peak and off-peak, plus a few pence per kilowatt hour. So every time you share your charge, you get a few extra quid if they charge a full tank. But that's 20 quid per tank, cheaper than using a public charge point.
Yeah,
so all the neighbours and anybody nearby, they're not having to go somewhere very strange. They're in a residential area where they'd normally park their car. They don't have to walk very far. And also, when they park it and they're leaving it overnight, our app has charge now or charge off peak. So it'll delay the charge until the off-peak tariff kicks in. And then you're getting, massively cheaper charging. And it's where the grid wants that to happen. And it's doing nice slow charging, which is kind for your battery. That's what we want to be happening. So that all these residential areas where bollards on the pavement would be blocking the pavement.
Yes.
Bulge outs would be taking away parking spaces and ending up with wars between who's losing their spaces. Whereas if we can just allow domestic houses to be a second charging network in these residential areas, then it's going to be a lot easier to go visit people or be a worker in that area and just plug in your van when you're outside one of these. We can show those kind of shared charges on ZapMap when they're turned on, and people can still say, "Oh, yeah, never share it on Wednesdays or Sundays." Or Wednesday, Sunday evening is when I do mine. So take it off there.
But that's good.
But the sharing is something 70% of our current respondees on our sort of sign-up form for people who are interested in Kerbo Charge on our website, 70% have said they're interested in sharing their supply.
Good. Yeah, and that's perfect, isn't it? I was going to ask you, because this has got to be a burning question on everybody's lips, surely. What permissions do you need, and how much space? Obviously, I saw the mock-up that you had with you in Brighton, but because you're having to put something onto the public path, footpath as it were, what permissions do you need to get from the council? How does it all work? Do you do this? Does the resident do this?
Basically,
what is it?
Yeah, the public footpath is under the auspices of the council. Sometimes the county council, sometimes the city council, depending on who has highways authority. But it's there. They have to grant a license and permission for anybody to do things. You can't just cut it up just because you happen to have a chisel or a cutting disc.
Right. So
basically, the councils we're doing pilots with are separated into 2 camps. In one of them, Kerbo Charge look after everything. So customer talks to Kerbo Charge. We do the pre-survey, get the licenses in place with the council, turn up and use an approved highways contractor to cut into the pavement and do the install of the channel and make sure that it's all in the right place, etc., and get that done. It takes about 1 hour on site to do the installation.
Is that all?
That's all.
Okay. And what's the size? What size do you actually So that approved contractor, what size are they digging into the pavement?
This is one of the main benefits of Kerbo Charge. Because Kerbo Charge is a polymer channel, it has a bit of flex in it. So we can cope with the fact that most pavements are not flat and have a bit of uppy-downy, especially where people have cut through them to put optic fibre or changed where the paving stones are or anything like this. So we only have to cut a 6 centimetre wide gap, and we go about 3.5 centimetres down, so it's still in the tarmac layer. So we're not going down into the sub-base, we're not going down into any of the utilities. So 3.5 centimetres deep, and then once we cleared that out, we put a bit of some special mortar and sealant we put in, settle the channel in that, make sure it's flat on both sides, and we can hold it down to match the curve of the pavement, and then within an hour it's done, and it means we can fit into relatively badly misshapen pavements without having to take out a huge load of pavement and reinstate it. And the council highways teams really like that, because pavements aren't flat. So if we came with some sort of rigid solution, we'd end up having to reinstate a much larger bit of pavement.
So do you work with the council highways people?
Yes.
Or do you work... Oh, you do? Okay. So is it something that the council says you have to work with these people?
Yeah, well, every council has, as well as their own in-house team, which may be outsourced or in-house, they approve a number of other highways contractors for that area. So they say, in this area, here are our rules. Here's what you have to do. Here are the safeties. This is the style of work we approve and don't approve. In these historic areas, you must use this kind of stone, this kind of whatever, and then if you sign up to these things, then you're approved. So we use an approved highways contractor. Some areas, it isn't the customer speaking direct to us, it's the council. So you go to the council website, same sort of place, you get a drop curb, and it says, I want a Kerbocharge charging channel, and they will then do the survey and put their staff out on site to put it in, and they just buy the channels from us and they deal with the whole thing. So two different ways that different councils do it.
Doing it.
But if you start by coming to Kerbocharge and signing up on the website, we will direct you either to us or to the council accordingly. And at the moment we're going through a number of pilots, and we have new pilots coming on stream all the time. So if you go to the Kerbocharge website, put in your postcode, we'll say either we've got a pilot in your area, let's sign you up because we've got a discount for that. And sometimes the pilots have partial funding from the council. So that will get you a lower cost on your channel. When you're ordering with us, you can also order one of our charger partners to put a charger in. Because as you might know, most charger fitters will not fit a charger to your house if you don't have a driveway. Because it's not approved to do so. So because we're getting council permission to put in the channel, we can also slipstream a charger in for you at the same time. And if it's one of our approved chargers, we can connect it to our sharing network as well.
Okay.
But yeah, go to the kerbocharge.com website, fill in your details, and we'll tell you, we'll get you in a pilot. Nope, there's not one yet. But if you nudge your local councillor, you might be able to get a pilot in your area. So if you mail your councillor and persuade them they probably want to try this, then we'll give you 50% off.
Fantastic. That's a really good idea. I wanted to ask you, so what is the length of time? Because we all know that councils are under stress and under pressure. What is the length of time that it takes to get permission for all of this to happen? What, on average, have you got an idea?
At the moment, this is still in pilot, so it really depends when you arrive in the pilot cycle. We had one person who was very lucky who contacted his council while we were just putting some things in for one of the pilots, and for them it took a week. Normally, we're looking at weeks, not days. So, 2, 3, 4 weeks, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something where you want to be, especially during these pilots, you want to just get your mail in really early. It depends how quickly the council move. And then we need to do the pre-survey, starts with a desktop survey, and then sometimes they send someone on site to just make sure that there's no obvious things in the way, such as the pavement being so bad it's dust and we can't fit anything to it. We need a secure surface of some sort, or there's manhole covers, or there's access or other things there. So we just need to make sure that's right. We need to suspend the parking so that the space directly outside your house doesn't have a car in it when we try and bring a big diamond edge disc cutter through, because we don't want bits of flying stone to hit anybody's car. So there's just a few bits of pre-work that have to be done before we can go in and fit it.
So we're talking, like you say, so weeks, not days. So they need to be kind of looking at that. In fact, because while we've been talking, there's a street that I know quite close to us where it's all very tight terraces. The pavement is a little bit wobbly, wonky, but I can imagine that actually having Kerbocharge there would be amazing for these people. I mean, there's always cars on both sides of the road, so even just navigating it is quite tight, but the pavement is intact, so it's not just. I'm assuming if the pavement was dodgy, it would be down up to the council.
Yeah, they do a little bit of resurfacing in that area, and then you can go in there. It's not the end of the world. It just means there's an extra bit of activity that has to happen first. And I've only ever seen one that was that bad that it would have needed resurfacing. But we found a little bit of pavement further up that was okay, and used that. But we've done things in paving slabs and in block pavers and in very, very wobbly pavements before, and that's not been a problem. It's been one of the things that's really impressed the highways teams that we've been working with, is how it is able to cope with going up and down and following the contours of a rough, ropey bit of pavement.
And are you able to share where the current pilots are, or is that secret squirrel stuff?
It's not secret. It's just that councils like to make their own press announcements, so we need to allow them to do that. So councils like Milton Keynes, Reading, I think West.
Are they?
Yeah.
We'll have to look. Well, that's where I live. So.
Do you have a driveway?
We do have a driveway, but like I say, where I live in Caversham, which is north of Reading, there are some streets. There's definitely one really long terraced street that I was thinking of in kind of Caversham.
Oh, brilliant!
And there's quite a lot of.
Well, let people know.
Lot of terrace
right
in.
But Reading, doing one of them. Durham is one of the hero councils up in the north, followed by East Lothian, up near Edinburgh. And there's various. In some cases, it's basically a local hero council is doing the first pilots, and then the neighbouring councils sort of peeking over the fence, and they're going to copy their homework. So we're once those pilots are complete, we're hoping all the neighbouring councils, like when we did the first installs in Durham, I think we had 4 or 5 other councils standing around, helping with the emotional support work of digging in the pavement, if you've ever seen it. So these things are going to start in some councils and then spread out from there. And we've got some London councils, we've got some in Wales, in Cornwall, in all over the place, moving forwards towards pilots. So this is the pilot year. But when we get to next year, it's gonna be much more widespread.
Spreading it out.
What we found very exciting about people thinking ahead in the EV transition is people in their house searches are now saying they don't want to buy a house where they can't charge an EV at home. Yeah. Because they recognise that as an issue. And some of them are saying, I'm not getting an EV until I've got at-home charging. But they're saying long-term house purchasing. And we've seen people spend tens of thousands on buying extra land or parking rights to be able to offer that. And things like Kerbo Charge are a long-term asset for the house. But it means that house then can be sold with EV at-home charging. And it's going to make people's transition to EVs happen faster.
Easier.
And it's going to mean people can look at more houses as practical for them to have with at-home EV charging. So I think we're going to see it slowly, then all at once. And a lot of people, and really it's getting people to know that it's possible. Because at the moment they think, I haven't got a driveway, I can't park at home. It's going to really suck. And getting them to know that there are solutions now.
There are options. They
can, nudge their councils to prioritise getting there sooner in some cases, especially if they've got an EV now and they're feeling that pain. Especially we've got some of the big utility companies are, making big commitments and they're electrifying their engineer van fleet.
Yeah.
And many of these engineers take the vans home overnight and then they begin the next morning with an empty van and have to take up a half an hour of their shift time to charge. The utility company itself is wanting to pay for Kerbo charges to go in so that their drivers can start the shift with a full tank. So even commercial electrification of fleets is, a really exciting space where we're going to see this roll out for people who are working on your electricity supply in an EV vehicle. They know they really want to get this future to come quicker. This convenient at-home charging for everyone, for taxi drivers, for the vans and the van drivers and the engineers, as well as for people with their own private vehicles.
You've just got me thinking about, so I've got a friend who lives in Bath and he was talking about how there's no lamp posts on his street. He lives in some flats. I don't know how tall it is, but I was kind of thinking, actually it would work for those if he can get parking on the street, and I'm sure outside the flats, if they can install kind of charge points there that are managed by the people who live in the flats, and you've got Kerbo charge running to their car, that'd work perfectly, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and shared. Whether it's a situation where people who've got the ground floor flats act as the hosts and use their own private supplies, and then use the sharing app to make a few pence on every kilowatt when they're sharing.
Yes.
Or you get the landlord meter to have a bunch of chargers put on that. And again, the app automatically takes care of the payment to pay for the electricity plus a few pence, but that's still way below any of the private network prices. And you're not having to put a commercial charger in, you're just putting a standard domestic charger. It's not going to be that expensive.
Yeah.
And as you were asking earlier, neighbours who are near enough to run their cable through a channel, they can use the same channel. There's nothing private about it. And one of the things we like about the channel being simple is it's not just for running a Type 2 charging cable for today's technology. You can also run a V2X cable to do bidirectional charging of the house from the car. Or we've had some people say, well, I've got a mobility scooter that I need to charge on 24 volts. Will it take a 24 volt mobility charger line? It's like, yeah. What about trickle charging my camper van? Yeah, it'll do that. Basically, if technology moves forward and you get a different charger or a different vehicle or a different cable, it's going to charge all of those things. It's a long-term piece of infrastructure. As we electrify everything, it's going to allow you to connect your whatever it is that's the other side of the path to your house, whether it's
funny, yeah, because you saying about the camper van, because I was asking you about this anyway, wasn't I? But the reason why I was asking about camper vans specifically, I saw like an RV, sized big camper van thing, and they had a cable going over a bush that was going over a path that was going in through the window, and I just thought, oh my god, that just looks shocking. So yeah, it'll solve all of that, won't it? It'll
That's
be tidy
exactly
and
it.
everything.
We've had, and especially where you've got people who are mobility impaired, you don't want things that are going to trip people at night when you can't see anything, or during the day. You don't want bumps or anything else. So whatever the reason is for taking a cable across to the highway, this is a safer way of doing it. We've got one protected residential housing area where the support workers' vehicle fleet is electrified, and they want to charge these while they're visiting some of these facilities, but they need to make sure they're not going to trip over anybody with mobility walkers, where they're not lifting it very high, as well as wheelchairs and other things. And we're going in, installing there in a place where it couldn't be higher profile, that the council doesn't trip over the people it's trying to protect. So it really is there to mean that the EV transition is not going to make things worse for the blind and the mobility impaired. And because we've got a self-closing flap that absolutely seals flush and leaves just the tiniest little crack, so almost nothing's going into the channel, it means kids on razor scooters aren't getting their wheels going down. It's people in heeled shoes haven't got anything, their heel is going to go down. It's making sure that it's safe for all the different kinds of road users. In fact, the high heel is the most tricky thing we've had to design around in terms of the pressure on one point. It's higher pressure than an elephant. We actually tested it at the BSI up to triple the highest truck tyre pressure. But so as long as 3 brick trucks aren't sat on top of each other, I think it'll be all right.
So, do you know what? I want to ask you, the one thing that I haven't asked, one of the things I've not asked is, so who pays then? Is it the council that pays for this? Is it the residents that pay for this?
normally this is going to be the homeowner
Right.
that's going to pay.
Okay.
So it becomes an asset for the home that the home now
Yeah, I
can
get
charge
you.
safely, etc. During the pilots, the councils are sometimes paying part of it.
Right.
And Kerbo Charge does have some early adopter discounts available for
Right.
people as well.
Yeah.
But even for those people who are paying full price, the payback, break even is in about 8 or 9 months
I can
compared to
imagine.
charging on a public charger. But that's ignoring the convenience. That's just the pure price difference of being able to charge on a domestic supply instead of on public chargers.
I mean, yeah, it's opening up to so many people. And if you're talking about, like I say, going back to this friend of mine who lives in this flat in Bath, I assume that actually as a group of residents, so they can either have the landlord pay, or they can actually pay for it as a group of residents, can't they?
Yeah.
And split it between them. You know, I suppose
Yeah.
you could have multiple points depending on what the residents decide, and actually split the costs so that they, you know, wherever they're parking, if they're all parking in with this one specific area, they know that they say there's four Kerbo
Yeah.
charge there, you know,
Yeah.
areas that
And
they
you can get
charge
several
through.
cables through one channel because we've had to oversize the channel so that if somebody's using a high-speed DC charging cable, it'll go through. But domestic charging is AC, and you only need a narrow cable. So if you can probably get 2, 3, or maybe even 4 domestic cables through this at the same time if you just needed to get those across a pavement and then out to, you know, a set of parking areas.
Interesting. That's really good. So do you know, we were talking so much about there were so many things that we were talking about before we started recording this. I think I've asked you every single thing except for, so we haven't talked about Masabi, and we haven't talked about you being the entrepreneur in residence. And I can't even remember where that was now because we've just been talking so much here. But do you want to talk a little bit about Masabi, which was the previous company, and how you kind of managed to, what did that do to get you into Kerbo Charge? How did it sort of support your want and your, you know, kind of recognition that this was a good option to move into?
Well, the Masabi company does public transit ticketing. So we've been helping to digitize and virtualize ticketing around the world. We started in the United Kingdom with UK Rail, and we set the standard for digital ticketing on phones and on paper for the UK railway networks, which is now available everywhere. So if you've ever bought a ticket on Trainline web app, on the Trainline mobile app, and then scan that through a gate, that's what we developed.
Right, okay.
Masabi. And then we took that technology over to the USA, and we deployed that for the commuter railways in Boston and New York, Los Angeles, Vegas, and a whole bunch of other bus and subways, and then took that to Japan and Australia and Canada and bits of Europe, and now going down into Central America. So the sun never sets on the Masabi empire. It does over $1 billion of tickets a year.
Wow.
And it's a great British export. So it's something where we turn up and we are in procurements for government kind of service contracts where it's us versus IBM and Xerox and Accenture and, you know, big names, and this tiny little company from London called Masabi.
Wow.
But we're very proud of what we've done, and we now no longer only do the kind of mobile ticketing, but we do tapping your bank card and have it automatically figure out the cheapest fare that you could have paid that month. And we do cash digitization for the people who are underbanked and don't have smartphones, so that they can still take part in better price ticketing, and just folding away all of the unnecessary single-use infrastructure.
Right.
So really upping the sustainability and lowering the costs for transit agencies, and also working to try and help push people towards the right kind of mobility choice. So at the centre of high-density cities, getting people in and out, that's really about mass transit. It's not about saying, let's get everybody into a self-driving electric Google car. It's getting people in and out of London, New York, and big cities. You've got to be on mass transit. The train I take into London is not a high-speed train. It's a flat-fronted, common or garden, boring train, and it gets 2,000 people into London at an average of 90 miles an hour. And then in 4 minutes, everybody's got off, and the train turns around and goes out and does it again. And it's only driven by 2 humans.
Yeah.
And that efficiency cannot be met by any private car technology.
No.
So if I had a whole bunch of self-driving Teslas trying to get 2,000 people in and out of central London, the road space,
It would.
the interaction with other road users, the safety issue, the parking,
Yeah.
no. So the transition to EV is basically... but my interest in mobility from Masabi and getting that around the world, I love what we've done there. We've encouraged more people to use public transit. We've freed up more funds from public transit to go into vehicles and provision of service rather than into everybody building new IT projects to do expensive smart cards and other sort of ticketing systems. So we're kind of... I think we've better than halved the cost of fare collection in that industry, and we've dropped the upfront cost by about 5x of getting the industry out of the idea that they need to buy lots of equipment and do lots of custom software, and we're getting everybody to just reuse the same software, don't have as much equipment. It's very, very, sustainability focused business, and I love that. And I love active travel. I love where we make the cities have safer ways for you to use lighter travel options. So whether that's bicycles and scooters or mobility scooters of one form or another. So often, protected bicycle lanes are not about Lycra road warriors. Protected bicycle lanes is where people on tricycles go. It's where people on those little electric kind of senior buggies go.
Yeah.
It really is a mobility enhancing way to get people from within 1 or 2 miles of the centre of a city, in and out of a city, without having to find parking.
Yeah.
And then travel from the parking to and fro. It is much better when you've got dedicated lanes that are separated. Not a painting of a line with please don't run over the cyclists and people on mobility scooters. Here it's like separate it, and then people can use it. And I really like that. In terms of in the middle of a city, I really don't want to see us just take what we do now with petrol cars and turn them into electric cars, because that's still going to have the road traffic issues, the safety issues and everything else. Where you do have to have a vehicle, I really think we need to shift from fossil fuels to electric.
Absolutely.
And from the changing the language around environmental, the climate change, I think we should very much stop talking about saving the planet. The planet really doesn't care, and it's going to be around long after we are. Saving Mother Nature. Nature is going to adapt to the changing climate. There are going to be extinctions, and there are going to be new opportunities. That is going to happen whatever we do. The reality of climate change is it's going to impact humans. Exactly. And we've got to start, even we've got to, I think from a language point of view, focus on helping humans to survive. We've got to start talking in selfish language, which is going to appeal to not preaching to the choir, the audience who are already engaged with climate change. We've got to start using language that's going to appeal to people who resist changes in their current habits. We've got to explain what the selfish reasons are.
Yeah.
And the selfish reasons for a low traffic network are living in a nice quiet place with open air pubs. The selfish reasons for bicycle routes are that you can cycle back slightly tipsy after 2 glasses of red wine. The selfish reasons are it's quieter and the air is better for you and everyone that's around there. The selfish reasons are it's cheaper.
Yeah.
The selfish reasons from a right-wing political point of view are that renewable electricity security is national security.
Yeah.
So energy security is national security. If we're generating 90% of the energy we need locally from good local wind and good local sunshine, we don't have to engage in political pacification or international wars to secure gas and oil supply from places that we don't really align with politically and socially. We don't want to prop up dictatorial regimes with appalling human rights records. We really don't. We don't want to have to pacify people who are arresting journalists. Or our own journalists, for that matter. And we are forced to do so for energy security. The moment we start doing more local energy production for local people, the more we don't have to be militarily and politically entwined with other interests which are not aligned with the interests of our country. And so if we start to change that language around those choices in a city being around having a nice city, if you want to see pictures of great places to visit on holiday, they're the pedestrianised cities, they're the walkable cities, they're the clean and quiet cities. That's the selfish reason why people like going to centre parks. It is actually a nice little place to go.
It's a little isn't it? Yeah.
It is. And let's have a look at some of the beautiful cities of Europe. It's interesting, unusual, but it's walkable, and it's you're walking. We really can rehabilitate our towns by banning cars from the middle of the towns. The funny thing is, shopping malls are an artificial town centre, created because we let the cars make the middle of towns really unpleasant to be in. And so we created a shopping mall where you have a whole bunch of shops, the same shops that would have been in town, in the shopping mall without cars driving between them. So now you can stroll from shop to shop and not get run over, and that's all nice. And the city dies, the town dies.
Yeah.
And when you then ban cars from the centre of the town, and you can now go to somewhere which has character, which is interesting, which has real old shops and back alleyways and pubs and restaurants and nice places to be, and it's in the middle of town, the shopping mall starts to wither and drop off like a parasite that's not needed anymore. We really can rehabilitate our towns. If you go to Ljubljana in Eastern Europe, if you go to somewhere like Chichester, where I live, the centre of town is not empty shops. The centre of town is bustling. It's beautiful. It's got a market stalls 2 days a week. It's got back alleyways that are full of unusual shops and interesting places to be, not just bins. And the whole the crossroads that forms the middle of the town is completely pedestrianised.
We've got a bit of that in Reading.
No through traffic at all.
We've got a bit of that in Reading, but we need a bit more, to be honest, because Reading is just the centre of town, centre of Reading. I don't know whether you've been very often, but the centre of town, it is kind of, it's fine. You can get from the station, and then you've kind of got a lot of pedestrianisation, but you get yourself on what they call the IDR, which is the inner distribution road, or coming into Reading, or coming over the Reading bridges, the Reading Bridge or the Caversham Bridge, where I live in Caversham. It's just awful. It's polluted. It's horrible. We need to do something about it. Do you know what? I could talk to you. We've talked so much, and there's so much more to talk about. I think I need to get you back on again, Ben. We're going to have to finish off now, because I will tell you later how long we've been talking. So let's just finish off though with, so you've given your website. So is it kerbocharge.co.uk or .com, did you say?
Kerbocharge.com with a K at the beginning.
Right. Okay. And you're on LinkedIn. You personally are on LinkedIn anyway, aren't you?
Yes.
So people can contact you through LinkedIn if they're interested in talking to you.
Yeah, and sign up on the website.
Okay.
Sign up on Kerbocharge to find out if it's a pilot in your area, or if we're going into production, or whether or not it's still a council that's not ready and might need the priorities nudging up by hearing citizens say this is important to them.
Yeah.
And if you do send in, we can send you a pro forma email. If you do send that into the council, then we'll give you 50% off your Kerbocharge as well.
It's really, really good idea, honestly. So for those of you who haven't got driveways and haven't, and live in these types of streets where you talk to the people that you live in the area with, and see if you can kind of come to some agreement, or I think this is a really good way to get, start bringing electric vehicles into local areas. So I congratulate you, Ben. And obviously, yourself and the founder as well. You both co-founders. Fantastic idea. So
thank you, Liz.
If there's anything else you want to share before we go with regards to kind of other social media, I'm happy for you to kind of do that.
I'd say mainly LinkedIn, I think, these days, for Kerbocharge on LinkedIn as well, if you want to keep up with announcements of the next councils to go into pilot when they all make their own announcements. And I'm pretty sure that Yeah, I think another area you mentioned earlier will be announcing shortly that they're going into a set of pilots and trials.
Well, as and when this goes out, I will make sure that anything in addition to what you've talked to me about is in the show notes. So we'll make sure that all the links are available for everybody to choose, and I'll put all your kind of all your feeds and everything like that. But look, just to say, it's been really interesting. Like I say, there was so much more we could have talked about, so I will need to get you back on again if you're happy to do that.
Always a pleasure, never a chore.
Oh, bless you. Well, listen,
I could talk till the cows
well,
come
so
home
can I,
about
so that's
the
two
mobility.
of us. Listen, thank you ever so much, Ben. It's been brilliant talking. And for everybody else, I'm going to say see you next time. Thanks for listening and watching. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.